How are you today? Art Jeremiah here, and I'm back with another terrain building video. I know it's been a few weeks since I posted a video, but I'm getting back into it, and if you want an explanation, then stick around to the end to see where I've been. So first thing I do is shred up a bunch of paper and put it in a mixer. So I went ahead and put my dentist bill in there, and then I went ahead and put some junk mail in there. I added a little bit of paper towels. This is Bounty. I definitely don't recommend using Bounty for this. It didn't dissolve the way I wanted it to dissolve. And then I used some packing paper and some construction paper. Construction paper is great, especially if you want colors. I mean, that little bit of black construction paper is just going to dye everything dark gray or black. Also, newsprint works good and toilet paper works good. Then I add a little bit of water. I use hot water. You don't have to use hot water. And you want to let it soak for a while. Maybe a couple hours. I didn't quite let it soak for a couple hours when I did mine, so it's not necessary, but it's definitely going to break it down a lot more. And honestly, I'm going to save you a little bit of hassle. If you have toilet paper, you can go ahead and use toilet paper. It works a lot better for this recipe than all these different paper products. I just wanted to show you, you can use whatever paper products you want. You can even use cardboard or newsprint. Basically, we're doing some paper mache, and I fill that blender full of water. And then I just blend. You'll see that that little bit of construction paper really darkened up the whole mix. Unfortunately, I didn't do a good enough job moving stuff around, and this was a brand new blender, brand new cheap blender, and I made it smoke pretty bad. Like I said, it's going to be a lot better if you use toilet paper. Another option is newsprint. If you just use construction paper, that works really good too. So I'd stick to those three just in case, or one of those three. With toilet paper, you don't really even need to mix it up. You can just mix it in a container with water and just let it sit for a couple hours and it'll just start breaking it up. The cheap toilet paper, you'll see that it's smoking right there. Look at that smoke. I saw a little bit of smoke. Whoops, I'm an idiot. Anyway, I use templates for these. You don't really need to use templates. I just wanted to repeat the process over and over. So if you're looking to repeat the same shapes, definitely use templates. It'll save you a lot of time. And I'm just making these templates out of basic cardboard. And then I trace out the shapes that I want on my pink foam. And I'm using 1-inch thick XPS foam for this. I'm trying not to spend too much time explaining some of this because some of it I already explained how I use it. Okay, so a few weeks back I did a modular hills video, some basic modular hills. And I'm using that same technique to get a rocky texture to the outside of all the foam pieces. And these are going to be some like desert outcroppings and hills. They're going to be more detailed than those modular pieces I made before. So I did spend a little bit more time chiseling the edges and getting just the right shapes that I wanted. And my hot glue gun's already heated because I've had it plugged in, warming up. And some of the spare pieces that fell off, I just cut rock-like shapes out of all those pieces. So each of the outcroppings is going to have a 1-inch thick base. And I'm attaching all these rocks to the top of that base. Random sizes, random shapes, random placement. To give a little bit more variety, I did stack some sideways, if that makes sense. So instead of stacking it like hamburger ways on the hill, I did it like hot dog ways. Does that make sense with foam? No, it doesn't. But maybe you get what I'm saying, maybe you don't. If not, just watch the video, you'll see what I'm saying. Just stack them on their side. Not all of them, just some of them. And then we're going to make the little mixture that we're going to cover all these pieces with. And it had been a while since I made this mixture. It's similar to Sculptamold from what I understand. Basically just paper mache pulp with some plaster in it. If you've ever done paper mache, all it basically is, well, one recipe, all it basically is like Elmer's white glue / PVA glue and the paper pulp. And paper pulp is just blended up wet paper. And so you'll see that I mixed those two together and I mixed some plaster in there. And this first little batch I made a little more runny than I normally would, but it'll dry regardless. There's not a certain consistency. I hear a lot of people say mix it like cottage cheese. That sounds really gross to me. I don't know why. I don't want to be smearing cottage cheese all over my terrain, I guess. I mean, I say mix it the consistency that you need it to be. If you do it more runny, it's going to go into the cracks more. It's going to take a little longer to dry. The plaster helps it dry faster, so it's not going to take like extreme amount of time to dry. Just a few hours. Well, a few hours dry to the touch. I think it's going to take about 24 hours to cure. at least. If you're in a hurry, mix it thicker. It's going to be chunkier though if you do it that way. And yeah, I just take my mixture and smother it all over the pieces. And basically this mixture is going to represent like the sand. Does that make sense? Not going to represent, it's going to be where the sand is. So you're going to have rocks jutting out of the sandy ground, and this mixture is going to be where the sandy ground is. It's basically going to go underneath all of the sand. Okay, and you'll see that I'm applying it both with the knife and with my fingers. It's often easier just to use your fingers. You don't have to wear gloves like I am. I don't think there's anything really toxic in this, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. It will stick to your fingernails. It will stick and get in all the cracks. That's the main reason I'm wearing gloves. And I realized I didn't want it as soupy as I had it, so I did take a paper towel and dab some of the moisture out and then start applying it, and that worked a lot better. Like I said, this is a lot like Sculptamold. It might even be same ingredients, I'm not sure. I know Sculptamold has like a plaster paper texture to it, and this mixture only shrinks just a tiny bit. It's not going to be noticeable, and it's not going to warp the foam. It's really pretty straightforward. I just keep doing it over and over. Okay, you can pick up this shirt over on my website along with some other shirts and some stickers. I try not to theme them towards my channel. I just feel that's kind of cheesy. They're game related. I got this one. This is probably the simplest design. No, the simplest design is the OKSDM, but this is probably the second most simple design. I've also drawn some characters. You want to go check those out. So I made a second batch. I want to hurry and show you how I made the second batch because it's more right. It's not as runny. And the first thing I do is I take my paper pulp and I squeeze out a lot of the water. Almost all of the water you can squeeze out. You don't have to, it doesn't have to have the water. Try to squeeze out as much of the water as possible because you're going to re-moisturize it with the glue. And it'll make it a lot harder when it mixes with the plaster. It doesn't take a lot of plaster. 2 or 3 spoonfuls is plenty. You don't want too much plaster because then it's going to end up too brittle. And the plaster with the glue actually prevents it from being too brittle, and it really sets a nice, hard, durable surface. And it's also going to be lightweight, so for all you people who like lightweight terrain, like me, it's perfect for that. A little bit messy. And really, if you don't want something so messy, an alternative would be just air dry clay, or I've even used Milliput. It takes quite a bit of Milliput, but I mean, that stuff's pretty cheap. Sometimes when I'm in a hurry, that's what I do. In any of those ways, it's going to be durable. Okay, and when it's mostly dry, this is a few hours later, you can see that it's not completely dry, but I'm still going to start adding the sand. Okay, so this part's really straightforward. So first thing I do is I add the Mod Podge and black paint to all the areas that I did the plaster mixture. Basically paper mache mixture. It's more of a paper mache mixture. I forgot to mention the point of the paper mache pulp mixture. It's just to even it out and make it look more natural and make it look like the sand has like blown up onto the rock. I don't know, it just looks more natural. The boulders and rocks are going to be more settled into the ground like they would be if you were out in the desert walking. Basically all the paper mache pulp sections, or whatever you want to call it, Sculptamold or whatever you're using. I'm going to call it paper mache pulp because that's what I've been calling it since forever. So anyway, I'm using black paint and Mod Podge, and I just paint over all the sections that I'm going to have sand, and I sprinkle that sand on the pieces. And you'll see it's already starting to take shape. You'll see it looks like a little sand, not a dune really. I don't know, a little sand hill with some rocky outcroppings. And I just repeat that process on all of them. It's pretty straightforward, and it's going to look really good in the end, especially after we get it painted. You can just use PVA glue if you want. I prefer the black paint mixture because I can see where I've added all the mixture. And the sand that I'm using is some play sand that I've sifted all the bigger grains out of. That way it looks more like sand duney sand. Okay, and when that's pretty much dry, I black bomb the whole thing. And I'm using black paint and Mod Podge for this. You've seen this 100 times, so we'll go ahead and skip that part. Oh, looks like I lost a little bit of footage. It's okay. Okay, now I don't always use an airbrush for this. I decided to this time use an airbrush. It's just going to give a little bit more smoother look to it. And do a pretty simple paint job. The rocks are gray, darker gray. And the sand I'm base coating brown first. And these aren't any sort of like actual airbrush paints. I'm literally See right there, you can see we're using craft paint in the airbrush. I found out you can use craft paint in an airbrush, that the molecules aren't too big for the airbrush. I'm using a mixture of craft paint, water, and flow improver. Put through my airbrush, spraying this on. Takes a little longer with an airbrush, honestly, to get this coat down, but it still works. As I've said 100 times, or more or less, I don't know. I've said it a lot. Part of this hobby is experimenting, so this is actually my first time experimenting with putting craft paint through my airbrush, and I'm really happy with the result. And I just keep building up layers with my airbrush. So I'm going to keep the rocks just gray like they are. I'm just going to add colors to the sand. And like I said, I started with a base of brown, and then I started going with like khaki yellow taupe color. It's kind of hard to see because I got it kind of dark in here. But you can see that it's kind of yellow, kind of tannish, like desert should be. Then I find a big flat brush, squirt a little bit of antique white on my palette, and go to town dry brushing. Like I've said before, dry brushing is just loading your brush with paint, wiping the majority of it off, and just hitting all the high spots of all the areas of the whole thing. And you'll see I get some nice clean lines. Really stands out, makes it look, I don't know, I like that look. See that look? Looks pretty good. Nice clean edges. And then I don't have to add a bunch of washes either. I mean, that looks pretty realistic just like that. We don't need a bunch of washes. If I can avoid some steps, that's even better. I don't like overworking it. A lot of times if you use washes, it ends up overworking it too much. I know a lot of people do it to leave with like a more realistic look, but I don't know. A lot of times it just muddies it up. Not that I don't use washes. I definitely use washes. Just for these particular pieces, did not do. And then, the final step, some Gamer's Grass. I take the Gamer's Grass tufts. These are 6mm tufts, and I put a little bit of glue. They are self-adhesive, so you don't really need super glue, but I like the extra durability of having the super glue, and I'm pretty sure most terrain builders and miniature artists like the extra glue on there, so you don't have to use it, but I would. And I just add these tufts randomly where I think they'd be. And I'm thinking where it's a hot desert, I want them in the like recesses of the rocks and things like that. That way they get a little bit of shade and don't just like burn to death. I don't know if that's real or not. And then I'm also using some AK Interactive bushes. Just a couple different colors, some drier ones. Both of them are shades of brown. The Gamer's Grass is more greenish brown. The other one's more like orangish brown. I figure they go good together with the yellow of the desert, so I use those. Now for the Glamour Shots. If you've been wondering where I've been, I have been... all sorts of things have happened the last little while. So, first one grandma died. Went to her funeral. Like, I was pretty close to her, so it hit me pretty hard. So yeah, a couple months ago I had a grandma died, and I was pretty close to my grandma, so it hit me pretty hard. It's hard to get motivated after that. I don't know why. And then my mom got COVID. And she was in the hospital getting blood transfusions. And no, she didn't get the shot and then have some nerve damage or some weird off-the-wall thing that people are making up these days. She got COVID. I don't know. I feel like she wasn't safe enough. But I'm mumbling. So yeah, just tragedy and tragedy and tragedy. So first my grandma died. Then my mom got COVID. And then my other grandma died. All like within the same little bit. And then I got like 72 orders, which is great. And if I had like all the time and like no fillings and things like that, it would have been great. It was a little hard to get caught up. I didn't ship out too much. Like, I didn't get super behind. A little bit behind on the bigger commissions. Almost done with those. I mean, we're still in business, still going strong. I'm going nowhere. I'm going to be on YouTube. I'm going to be on Instagram. I don't plan on leaving. If there's a little bit of hiatuses like this, it's fine. It's not like, I don't think it was a super long hiatus. It's not like I was gone for 6 months or a month or anything like that. 3 weeks, but a lot of that had to do with, I had to drive back to Missouri for one of my grandma's funerals, and I had to make sure I was caught up and ahead to go, and now I'm getting caught up again. But I want to make sure to get this video out, so all you people who've been looking for me, I know a lot of people on Instagram already knew I was having a little bit of struggles, and I appreciate all you guys for being patient with me. It's been kind of a hard year this year so far. News, so much. Doesn't seem like too much, but it was really a lot for me to handle. Like I said, I was really close to my one grandma, and I really thought my mom was going to die. I mean, you're in the hospital getting experimental blood transfusions, and she couldn't talk on the phone for more than a second. It was pretty miserable. It's pretty miserable. And yeah. So yeah, I'm not going anywhere. Not gonna stop building terrain, not gonna stop making art. I got this. We got this. So yeah, thanks to all the patrons for the support. Thanks to all the people who like my videos. That's a lot of support. Thanks to all the subscribers. Thanks to all the followers on Instagram. I'm rambling. So, before I ramble anymore, look for a video next week, hopefully.